All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first debate of the American Solidarity Party's 2023 presidential primary. My name is Shane Hoffman. I'm a member of the Solidarity National Committee and chair of the Presidential Primary Committee. This evening, we'll be hearing from what is an incredibly deep and accomplished field of presidential contenders. Tonight, we will be questioning the candidates on the tenets of whole life politics and on their ability to campaign effectively as representatives of a third party. First, let's go ahead and have a brief rundown of the rules. For the opening and closing statements, each candidate will have 1 minute. For each debate question, each candidate will have 2 minutes. Time may not be reserved. If you yield any time, it is gone. Each candidate also has two 2-minute extensions available to them that can be used at the end of any of their statements. Again, time may not be reserved. If you yield any time, it is gone. Candidates will be given an audible cue with approximately 10 seconds left and another when time is complete. The clock will be monitored closely. We will not shut you off mid-sentence, but we will be cutting you off very shortly thereafter. Remember, be courteous, attack policies, not people, and please do not talk during someone else's time. All candidates will be afforded the ability to speak on each question. There is a set order for the candidates to speak in, and each subsequent question will begin with the second candidate to speak on the previous question. This includes the opening and closing statements. And now for our first debate, we are fortunate to have two of our most accomplished past candidates on hand to moderate. First, we have our 2020 presidential nominee, Mr. Brian Carroll. And second, we have the host of The Open Door on WCAT Radio and two-time California gubernatorial candidate, Dr. James Hanning. And with that, I will hand the debate over to the moderators. Thank you.
As for the opening statement, each candidate in alphabetical order will have 1 minute to introduce him or herself. That's in this order: Dr. Jacqueline Abernathy, Dr. Larry Johnson, Erskine Levy Jr., Reverend Mark J. Powell, Joe Schreiner, Peter Sonsky, and Mike Vick. Dr. Abernathy.
Well, good evening, my fellow Pelicans. It's so nice to be here. I am Dr. Jacqueline Abernathy, and you may know me because I've been a delegate for Texas to the party. I was the gubernatorial candidate for the state of Texas, representing the party in the last election. My PhD is in public administration and management with a concentration in public policy because I wanted to influence public policy, and that's precisely what I've done. I worked at the federal, international, and state, local level, just about any level that I could to influence policy in favor of life from conception to natural death. And one of the reasons why I'm running is because I feel like that sort of expertise, that sort of policy expertise, as well as what I could bring to the table in terms of campaign finance, marketing strategy, would be absolutely critical for us to grow and take the most advantage of this next presidential cycle.
Dr. Larry Johnson.
In 1793, Jefferson resigned from Washington's cabinet. He opposed Washington and Adams' call for neutrality in the war between Britain and France. Happily for America, the Washington administration and Adams thereafter won the battle over neutrality, kept America out of the war so that this nation may develop free of foreign intervention. The policy of neutrality was the American norm from 1794 until 1898. Nearly 100 years of relative peace, unmolested by any imperial power, allowing America to develop, ready for 20th century challenges. Today, in 2022, we are faced with the same question. Shall we take up the banner of neutrality and prepare for 21st century challenges that await us? I say yes. And I ask for your support and vote for a new America of neutrality, peace, progress, and prosperity.
Okay, and Erskine Levy Jr.
Hello, fellow Pelicans and fellow Americans. My name is Erskine Levi. I'm running for the nomination for the American Solidarity Party candidate for United States presidency. My background is that I have been an elected member for a lower level position in California. I was part of the Assembly District Central Committee of the San Gabriel Valley area for 4 years. I was elected with 6,400 votes at the time. Since then, I have switched over to the American Solidarity Party in 2019, 2020. And last year, I was a candidate for U.S. Congress for the 31st District. And before that, I worked on Dr. James Hannick's gubernatorial campaign to help win the governorship of California. And let me see what else. My background is I've been married for 40 years to my wife, Heather. I have 2 sons. Both are on the autistic spectrum, Joseph 33, Matthew 28. And I have been in the education field for about 28 years at my school district that I'm at now. I teach social sciences, U.S. government, world history, United States history, and economics. So I'm not an expert at those, but I'm a good, well-versed in those areas. And I have been a captain in the United States Army, a former captain. My military career is from 1981 to 2002. And I somewhere in there, I was a police officer for Monrovia PD and Pomona PD. So I have a law enforcement experience too. And I hope.
Okay.
Okay. Reverend Powell was invited, but is not here tonight. Joe Schreiner.
Hey guys, Joe. And my watchword for tonight is baseball. You know, I just interviewed a history professor at Ohio Northern University for a newspaper article on the history of what's often referred to as America's favorite pastime. The professor said we romanticize baseball because of things like Babe Ruth in the bottom of the ninth, with bases loaded in the World Series, swinging for the fences. A metaphor. It's World Series election 2024. Is the ASP going to be swinging for the fences or just conservatively hoping for an infield single to move the runner to second? If it's about swinging for the fences, this time against all odds, except for that with God all things are possible, you'd want me up to bat. My prop for this evening. And Shane, I'm not going to use it during the wiffle ball game in Ren, so don't worry. I'll pass. The inning's over.
Okay, and Peter Sonsky.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Peter Sonsky from Connecticut. I represent the ASP as an elected member of a local board of education here in South Central Connecticut. You know, the American Solidarity Party is very unique. It doesn't endorse or engage in the polemical issues of all of the major parties. Instead, it brings people together with different political views, different political backgrounds, and they work together for the common good. I fully support ASP principles and its platform, no exceptions. I'm not about changing or nuancing the party's positions. I'm focused on changing American political culture. My campaign is going to be centered on growing the ASP in size and in influence, increasing knowledge of the party, support for the party and its platform. I want to attract not just voters, but also prospective local level candidates who can run for office and grow the party organically at the lower levels.
Okay, and it looks like we might have Mike Vick. He was caught in traffic earlier, but it looks like maybe he just checked in. Are you there, Mike?
So I am here, folks. I hope that you can hear me. I'm going to keep my video off for now. I am on my way back Atlanta, where I was attending a Christian Civic Leadership Academy as part of the AND campaign initiative. I am at the airport now, but I am here and happy to be here. You all may know me from my work on Pastor Chris Butler's campaign. I was his political director. Pastor Chris ran for Congress here in Illinois and got the ASP's nomination in that race. I have also been a member of the leadership team in Illinois and Indiana, and I was a delegate to the national convention last year as well. I'm someone who has done quite a bit of political work in the past, both in an electoral context as well as in organizing and political fundraising. And I'm seeking ASP's nomination for president to take us to the next level and all of that. So I appreciate your time and look forward to tonight's debate.
Thank you, candidates. And Dr. Hannick, you can start with the first question.
Thanks, Brian. The primary difference between our party and all the others is our adherence to a whole life ethic. We uphold the dignity of life at all stages and under all conditions. This is unique in modern American politics. Not only that, it's the core of our identity as a party. Now, what, in your view, does it mean to be pro-life for the whole of life? Dr. Johnson.
For me, this is a very theological question, and it begins with the belief in God, that God created each individual as unique, unrepeatable, and therefore sacred. And then there is the political agreement we made in our Declaration of Independence and in our Constitution, that again, this life is sacred from its creator. And so I stand very strongly for this principle that life, from conception to natural death, is something that's sacrosanct and must be protected. No abortion, no self-murder, no euthanasia, no death penalty. This is what it means to me.
Thank you. Erskine Levy.
Yes, I believe everything Dr. Johnson said, but I want to add to it pro-life for the whole life. Yes, conception till natural death, no euthanasia, no death penalty. I agree with that. But we also need to take care of the people after they're born, human beings. I would like to add to that, we need, for the whole life, we need to help out parents. We need to help out mothers and fathers. Sometimes they use the excuse that, well, we want to get an abortion because we can't afford it. Well, let's do something about that. Let's help them afford it. I mean, I don't want to pay for everything, but a little help will go a long way. So whatever we can legislate, whatever we can direct, whatever we can do for every state, not just the whole United States, but for the whole United States, we want to help them. And for example, maybe baby items, clothing, food, babysitting money if they need it, but also paid family leave. I mean, paid, not just if you apply, you get it. You're a parent, you're going to take some leave to be able to help with your brand new family. But as they get older, kids get older, they go to school. So I'm looking at education vouchers so parents can pick the school of their choice. And well, what the heck? How about with death expenses? How about lowering those estate taxes, inheritance taxes, not taking them away, but lowering the taxes on them to help out families in their grieving periods of losing a member? And that's all I wanted to say at that point. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Joe Schreiner.
Yeah, hey, James. You know, I gave a talk at an auditorium at Notre Dame University about this subject. I said consistent life ethic means you value all life from the womb to the tomb. At the 25-year anniversary Consistent Life Conference in Washington, D.C., I gave a presidential candidate stump speech that noted a consistent life ethic would be against abortion and euthanasia, yes. But it would also stand against poverty, pollution, and anything else that would end life prematurely, including nuclear proliferation. Well, while walking in the doors of a newspaper in LaGrange, Georgia, our daughter, Sarah, who was 12 at the time, had been pondering this issue and stopped me. She looked up at me and said, "Dad, we have enough nuclear weapons to blow the world up 100 times over. Why don't we just have enough to blow it up once and take the rest of the savings and help the poor?" As coincidence would have it, during the interview with the newspaper editor, he asked me my stance on, of all things, nuclear weapons. After pausing and winking at Sarah, I said, "We should just have enough to blow the world up once." You know, the ASP platform says our nation must lead the effort to rid the world of nuclear weapons through the use of arms control initiatives where doing so would not diminish national security. Sarah's plan would probably be a better start with this than even the New START treaty, which Putin just pulled out of anyhow. So you might have to just rely on Sarah's concept. That's it, guys.
Thanks for that. Next up, Peter Sonsky.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Hannock, I think I'm going to pretty much repeat what you said in your outset. Pro-life means every human life has worth. Every human life has dignity, all ages, all stages, all conditions, and regardless of past actions. Pro-life is pro-human dignity, and it's an innate dignity. It's an inalienable dignity. Yes, it means rejection of abortion, of euthanasia, rejection of capital punishment, by all means. But it also means rejection of human trafficking, of organ harvesting. It means rejection of ethnic and racial bias. It means rejection of religious persecution, rejection of unfair labor practices. But it also means moral courage, because this is not a popular opinion. It means advocacy, which is obviously policy making. It's demonstrating peaceful, respectful demonstrating. It means partnering with and supporting people and agencies and other organizations with like objectives to the ASP. It means practical outreach. I'm a blood donor. I run a blood drive every 8 weeks. Some people volunteer in food pantries, some in soup kitchens, and some give employment counseling. Pro-life for the whole life means recognizing human dignity in every person all the time.
Thank you for that. Now I see Mike Vick, and he's up next.
Yeah, so I'm actually on camera now. You may not be able to see me super well because it's dark out here, but so yes, pro-life for the whole life doesn't obviously just mean abortion, euthanasia, capital punishment, but you know, as others have said, we're talking about you know, being against violence in all its many forms in society, and working steadfastly on policies that will end that violence, whether that's violence in the form of police violence against unarmed citizens, whether that's violence in the form of unnecessary foreign misadventures and warfare, whether that's violence in the form of ecocide and working for short-term profit against the better interest of the planet and the people that depend on that planet. So pro-life for the whole life is a holistic message. We're talking about economics, making sure that people have good quality jobs and actually have basic ownership over their entire production value through worker cooperatives. So pro-life for the whole life is an expansive message, and it's what sets us apart from both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party.
And now, Dr. Jacqueline Abernathy.
Well, I would like to, I think the easiest way to sum up what it means to just be pro-life, not pro-life for the whole life, but just pro-life, is you don't make people dead. And that phrase didn't come from me. I mentioned it actually when I was on the Whole Life Women's panel a couple of years ago at the convention, at the ASP National Convention. And I said, I wish I could take credit for it. I actually got it when I was on a podcast with Mark Shea talking about euthanasia issues. It's been so easy for there to be enormous finger pointing of, you're a hypocrite from the left and the right, of on good faith disagreements of you're not pro-life unless you are, for example, pro-universal healthcare. Well, I am pro-universal healthcare, but there was a time that I was not. And the reason I was not was because I honestly felt like it was not a pro-life thing to do because it put persons with disabilities at risk of rationing and other disadvantages. So I want to basically piggyback and reinforce and applaud what Mr. Sonsky said about how we are a party that brings people together. And what unites us is stronger than what divides us. And what sets us apart, and I believe our selling point, is not that we believe in all of the social programs that we believe in. And of course, I support those as well. I believe you can either pay for schools or you can pay for prisons. You can pay for suffering after the fact, or you can pay to prevent it. And it can actually save money if you pay to prevent it. So obviously, I'm in favor of all these things. But what sets us apart is we are the only nonviolent option there is. So when we're campaigning, when we're coming up with our messaging as a party, I think it's important to focus on that because it is an incredibly low bar. You would think that every candidate out there would be against killing people in some shape or fashion. And I was the only one here in Texas. We are the only party. I feel like that's really what we should focus on in this election cycle.
And you would like an extension, I'll bet.
I was actually thinking about discussing because I wanted to make that clear that I feel like it's very important for whoever wins this nomination to focus on our selling point and not alienating people that might disagree with us on other policies that are not necessarily directly life issues. I got an email from a gentleman I didn't know saying that now that I'm running, he is going to be joining the party. And that was incredibly flattering. And I said, please tell me, what were your reservations until this point? I mean, it can't be anything about me. But one of the things that he said was that he works in the industry of the oil and gas industry. And it was the fracking part that dissuaded him. And to me, it seems so much of a shame to alienate people over issues like that when we have big, life, literally vital, life or death issues here on the ticket. And there's a quick story, since I have an extension, I only have 2 of them, might as well use it, that I'd like to tell of. I had a door knocker show up and knock on my door here in San Antonio, Texas. And she was campaigning for Greg Abbott, my opponent, one of my opponents in the Texas election for governor. And we started talking. And I actually, she didn't, of course, I didn't put her in a position and ask for her vote and get her to commit to vote for me instead of the person that she was working for at the time. But I really could see a light, something just click on in her brain when I said, you know, I am the only candidate that doesn't kill anybody. And you wouldn't think that that would set me apart, would you? You would think that that would be the low bar, right? You would think that anyone that does kill anybody for any arbitrary reason whatsoever would be the anomaly, not me. But no, we are different, simply that we respect human dignity and human equality from conception to natural death without any reasons for killing anybody. And I feel like that's what we really need to focus on in our messaging.
All right. Turn things over now to Brian Carroll.
Yes, our second question, building on question number one. Economics connects deeply with our whole life identity. Food, rent, education, healthcare, our ability to engage in many leisure activities, and more all depend on a solid economic foundation. How do you see the economics that is supported by the American Solidarity Party implemented by your administration as supporting our whole life initiatives? And we will start with Erskine Levy.
Yes, thank you very much. One of the first things as president and my staff would do is to go through the budget that's been offered by various different agencies and try to cut out any excess. And I'm pretty sure we can cut out millions of dollars of excess, maybe even possibly more. But with that, we can also give money to those pregnancy centers that do not support abortion. There's plenty of them out there. Uh, so that's pretty cool. But we, at the same time, cut money to those like Planned Parenthood that the main thing they do is abortions. Cut the money. That'll save some money right there. That's millions of dollars a year. And then we also have a system right now under this administration we have to give money to overseas entities to help them pay for abortions. I think someone's trying to garner this out to the whole world, and that would definitely stop under my administration. I think that's how I see our economics to help pay for pregnancy centers that's going to help moms and dads. Thank you very much.
All right, Joe Schreiner.
Yeah, in this particular topic, in 1992, political consultant James Carville coined the phrase, "It's the economy, stupid." And recently, that's been echoed by our own Amar Patel, who thinks we should be really focusing on that a lot, primarily in the campaign. Now, the overarching ASP economic principle is this, in quotes, "We reject economic behavior that undermines human dignity with greed." In other words, the ASP wouldn't concur with Wall Street's Gordon Gekko that greed is good. It was greed in large part that caused the Silicon Valley Bank to fail recently. And while the government bailed it out, the ASP believes that bloated, too big to fail paradigms should be brought to heel. And staying with bloated, the ASP stands against monopolistic power. The ASP is more into local production and family-owned businesses. And for those of us, or for those on the margins who are struggling, the ASP believes in strong social safety nets. On a contemporary level, homelessness in our nation's cities is increasing exponentially, and these people need more help than they're currently getting. Our family moved into a hardscrabble area of Cleveland for 5 years to do outreach work with the Catholic workers. And while I was there, I researched a whole lot of different safety net programs in order to help those people on the margins down there. And our position paper on urban renewal is replete with those, absolutely replete with them. And as we travel, I try and plant seeds about those long before I ever get to DC in order for people to pick up on them and start to do that in their cities now. So again, I'm not sure if that should be the primary issue, but it definitely is on everybody's mind in the country as far as economics go, and ours is different.
All right, Peter Sonsky.
Thank you, sir. So, any economic position must be pro-community, and in particular, not just pro-community, but pro-family. Humans are made for social interaction, interconnectedness. And any economic policies that we propose must always respect and be primarily directed at the security and the preservation of the family unit. They must also recognize and either mitigate or eliminate those economic and social pressures that often lead to abortion. I would make it include provisions and incentives toward an ownership economy and more affordable housing opportunities. I would direct it toward long-term financial security for individuals and families. So we're talking about affordable health care, and to echo one of my other candidates, that includes options for prenatal care, for delivery, for postpartum care, expanded child tax credits that promote family stability and help lift children out of poverty. How about paid parental leave? We have to have more consistency with these options for individuals. Flexible working hours. Families have enjoyed a little bit more of this in the pandemic, but we need to do more to assist them. Affordable childcare. This is a topic that I heard a lot the other night when I held a listening session about family issues. Affordable childcare, and then making sure that fathers are there to support their families, especially when they're not living in the home because of divorce.
All right, Mike Vick.
So I would lean into what makes our economics different, which is, we favor ownership, an ownership economy. We favor worker cooperatives, and the great thing about worker cooperatives is they aren't theoretical, and they exist in the world, and we know how to promote them. In Italy, they have something called the Mocora law, which says that if you are unemployed and you can get together with 9 other unemployed people, you get your entire unemployment allotment as a lump sum business loan on the condition that you use that money to start a worker cooperative. 1/3 of the GDP in one of the regions in Italy is generated by worker cooperatives. There are other things that we can do to promote them, things like giving workers the right of first refusal when a company is sold. If a company ships its jobs overseas, we can hit them with an exit tax to the tune of every benefit, tax benefit, and otherwise that they've ever received for being a part of our economy, and use that money in order to help the workers that would otherwise be displaced to take over that workplace and to run it as a worker cooperative. So these are many ways that we can promote worker cooperatives, many other ways that we can promote an ownership economy with owning, actual land and homes through community land trusts and through land value taxation, through a public option for housing. So these are the things that I would do. I would lean into what makes us different and promote that heavily.
All right, Dr. Abernathy.
Yes, sir. Well, you know what? I think I would start first and foremost with the obvious, and then I'll get more into the technical. The obvious is that we have not raised federal minimum wage since 2009. It is still subpar, is not anywhere near a living wage. As inflation has skyrocketed, that needs to change. We even have sub minimum wage, which was meant to encourage businesses to hire persons with disabilities, which I just think is flat out exploitation. And that needs to end. So there are those. We are the only industrialized nation that does not have maternity leave. And this is something that has personally hurt me greatly and hurt my premature daughter that was born by C-section. I did not have any maternity leave. I was basically working from the NICU. So there are those things. From a technical standpoint, what I would do to implement these is I did the math, and I believe that we have the infrastructure in our country to take the Family Medical and Leave Act and turn that into kind of the bones to have paid family leave. And we could do that with a moderate in payroll tax increase, and it could even be an opt-in, opt-out situation. So that would be easier to pass through the legislature because it wouldn't be mandatory and it wouldn't be stealing from Social Security. But it would give people a chance to invest a certain percentage, like their paycheck, for the option able to have time with a new child, have time taking care of a family member, have medical leave for themselves. The great thing about our economic policies are mainly that if we increase economic justice, we decrease the need for social programs in general. When we increase people's ability to take care of themselves and flourish, we decrease the need for programs like food stamps and Medicaid. And I would like to do more of that.
Hey, Dr. Johnson.
And I'm going to state that I may use my 2-minute extension here at the moment. This is a very important topic in terms of how we're going to campaign in a general election if it gets the nomination. Economics will be central, and as the saying goes, it's the economy, stupid. So let me talk about economics. It is important in the American ethos context to understand that one of the driving principles of Americanism is individualism and free enterprise. And I really do believe that talk of cooperatives will trap us into being called socialists. And I think we need to avoid that topic in terms of talking about economics. But we should focus on small businesses, family businesses, and individual property ownership, and expanding that aspect of economics. When I talk about my Gateway Act, which I have proposed, which is in my book, New America, and also which I posted on various sites and on my website, I talk about specific programs that reaches down into the local communities that would increase property ownership and business ownership. And this is what we should be focused on in the general election. One of the things that I found in where I work is that we have far too many people coming in unable to afford basic food. They're coming in with EBT cards, which here in Colorado is basically food stamps, because they can't afford to buy food for their kids. And the reason for that is they're not getting paid a living wage. And it's because they don't share in property ownership and they don't have their own businesses. And so they're not getting paid very well. This all has to change. And having a campaign that focuses on my Gateway Act, which has a specific program through Department of Education, through elevating NASA to departmental status, specific high-tech, high-wage employment program and property ownership program. This is what we need, cooperatives, just in terms of how that's going to play in a general election. The other thing I want to bring back is we talked about life. And I didn't mention last time, and I'm just going to throw this in, is that neutrality, amending our Constitution to put neutrality into it, is about life. It is pro-life. And I cannot see how anyone would oppose America being neutral in order to bring back the notion that we don't get involved in wars that are not in our national defense, that depletes our economy, that depletes our resources, that makes it impossible for us to do the kinds of things we need to do to reduce the number of people who cannot afford to feed their children. So economics is a very broad topic. I would be focused on individual property ownership, small businesses with their families, and helping to increase the wages of the American people. I don't think cooperatives is the way. It's going to be attacked severely in the general election.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Hannick, your question.
Yes, thanks, Brian. In the American Solidarity Party, we use certain words that are either not found in everyday conversation, at least for most of us, or worse, understood in ways that we don't use them. Words such as Christian democracy and distributism come to mind. How does your campaign handle messaging these topics? And let's begin this time with Joe Schreiner.
You know what? I would like to ask for the 2-minute extension on this because I'm going to use the word subsidiarity, and that's going to take 30 seconds.
Whoa.
In and of itself. So if I could get the 2-minute extension, I appreciate it.
You've got it.
All right, very good. You know what? Crossing over into mainstream America, especially through the conduit of mainstream media, would sound like this. And you know, I've had a huge amount of experience with mainstream media. And this is what the interviewer would say initially, at least most of them. What's this solidarity thing all about? Sounds like it's some kind of European socialism. Me? No, not at all. Solidarity just describes the heart of the platform. We are in solidarity with the unborn, with the poor. We're in solidarity with the struggling immigrant. As we are in solidarity with a clean environment, with safe streets, and with a fair and just economy. Interviewer, what's this distributism thing that I saw on the party website? Me. Again. Oh, that's simple and is exactly how it sounds. We want the so-called wealth in America distributed fairly. We want workers, all workers, to have a just wage and adequate benefits. We want to see a move away from big box retailers and corporate farm monopolies, with this money being redistributed in small family farms and Main Street mom and pop businesses. And like that. Interviewer. I also noticed the word subsidiarity in the platform. What does that mean? Me. Your guess is as good as mine. Ask James Hannock.
Grassroots first. Grassroots first.
Yeah, I know, James. I'm getting to that. And what I would say was, you know what? We want the decision making more in the hands of the village council than in the federal government. And so, you know, this is going to be a major thing if the party intends to cross over into mainstream, because it's easy to use those words on third-party friendly podcasts and a few online magazines that are have a proclivity towards being sympathetic to a consistent life ethic. But if the party really wants, if they're serious about crossing over, they're going to have to come up with some real, for lack of better phraseology, average Joe common speak in order to get to about 95% of the populace who would not in any way understand this. Plus, you don't have time in those mainstream interviews for the most part to go into in-depth. The reporter's looking for just a paragraph of that answer that he can cogently put in an article. So this one's a major one for the party because they're starting out at a disadvantage from the standpoint of the word solidarity. And they know it, and we know it. And so at this point, there needs to be the word messaging has been used a couple of times by Jacqueline, and there's going to need to be some really considered thought about the messaging with this.
All right. Next, Peter Sonsky.
Well, thank you. So I've enjoyed it. I've learned all about distributism and subsidiarity, solidarity, Christian democracy. How about sphere sovereignty? I haven't heard that one yet. But you know what? These are all those internal terms that are common in the ASP lexicon, and we can communicate because we easily identify with the terms internally. But you know what? We can be flexible with our terminology, and we have to be flexible with the vocabulary we use as long as we are consistent with our ASP values. How about people and family first? How about human dignity? We talked about that at the top. Human rights, human well-being. How about government existing for the benefit of people rather than people existing for the benefit of government? How about the ASP knows no distinctions such as racial or social classes? How about if we're messaging that is grounded in truth, if it promotes what is right, what's fair, what's just, it's going to be understood and it's going to be embraced. So messaging, as Joe just alluded to, it needs to be grounded in truth, not spin, and not sugarcoating either. It's not the multiplication of words. It's actually the simplicity of words. We can be very effective because we have a distinct platform that appeals to the masses.
Thank you. Mike Vick.
Yeah, so I would just point out that we have as Peter said, a platform that is quite appealing to the working class masses that we need to be going after. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel here. Amar Patel has done some good messaging on this with distributism, with ownership economics, ownership economy. I'll just point out solidarity is a word that I grew up with in a union household, and it's something that union people recognize and gravitate toward, and that's certainly a demographic that we need to be going after. So this is not like a $10 word that people don't know. It's a word that appeals to people who are working class, camaraderie among workers of whatever industry you're in. So I think that we shouldn't overthink this. I think that there are many ways in which the words that we already use are actually already appealing to people. And some of the $10 words that we use can be very easily summed up in a community orientation and in ownership economics and in camaraderie among workers. So I don't think that this is super complex. I think that sometimes we try to make it that way, but I think that these are words that are that have concepts that are already appealing to people.
Thank you. Dr. Jacqueline Abernathy.
Yes, I want to point out that if anybody's interested, I actually did an entire blog post on messaging and how important it is to just simply define our terms. When I was a professor, and even today, just as a general rule, I have a pet peeve when people use acronyms in shop talk, just expecting everybody to know what they mean, and you don't know what they mean. Like, did you get the TPS report and the BYOB and if you don't know what that means, what that says to you is that either you're dumb or you're out of the loop or you're not welcome. It does not send the message that we need to send if we want to grow the party. It also is just horrible for communication. How are we going to get our message out there if we're not explaining what it is, if it's misconstrued? And a big concern that I have is, my own father, like, oh, solidarity sounds like a bunch of commies. Said that to me when I was running for governor. And then Christian democracy. Oh my gosh, are you Christian nationalists? Because that's a scary misassociation that could not represent us any less accurately, could it? So I believe it's just important to just clearly define our terms and not assume people know what we're talking about, because also there are ways that people use the same words but in completely different ways. So let's just have working definitions that we use to explain everything in our messaging, and that would make sure that we get our point across.
Thank you. Dr. Larry Johnson.
Well, I kind of touched on this previously when I talked about not focusing as a campaign issue on the idea of cooperatives. I think that kind of terminology is going to be taken the wrong way. And so while I do support the precepts and the concept of having cooperatives as an economic model, I don't think that's a wise campaign move. I think we should be very much focused on the types of terms that Americans understand, like a livable wage is something that is constantly debated. I don't agree with those who say that the minimum wage is not supposed to be a livable wage. I simply don't agree with that. It should be the stepping stone to a livable wage. And so you shouldn't have to be on EBT or something like that to use a reasonable minimum wage. I personally would index the minimum wage so that every year is adjusted for inflation. I think that's a very important step that we should take. So I think in terms of messaging, we should stick to what is commonly understood as American free enterprise. And that means individualism, property ownership, business ownership, family control of businesses. That's what I would be talking about in a general election.
Thank you. And now, Erskine Levy.
Yes. First of all, you would not just say to everybody, okay, read our platform, it's all there, because even then, the key terms in that platform, the key terms we're talking about, the question that says, how do we manage those kind of key terms? Well, we're just going to have to do it onesies and twosies. We're going to have to set out the key terms, not the platform, because I've been a teacher for 28 years. And if you say someone to read the whole platform, of course we are. Everybody here probably has. That's not the point. But anybody else, they're not going to do it. So you need to pull out those key terms. You need to you make like a dictionary kind of thing, and then as they go to your website, as they go to the ASP website, the national or the state level websites, maybe have those key terms spelled out. We can probably do a better job of spelling out those key terms. That'll help us with any misunderstandings of some of our words we use. But that goes with any kind of organization. The law enforcement has their own jargon. The military has their jargon. The politics has its own jargon. And if people aren't going to understand unless you spell it out to them. So we just need to do a better job of pulling out those key terms and spelling it out to people and putting up where they can read it. And yes, we can ask them to read the whole platform, but then it's probably quicker to read the summary of the key terms. That's what I would do.
Thank you very much. Brian Carroll, can you take us forward with the next question?
Yes. Third party and independent candidates suffer serious disadvantages in elections. In addition to burdensome ballot access requirements, we suffer from people's fear of, quote, wasting their vote. And we get accused by both major parties of stealing votes from their candidate. To make matters worse, our current system generally provides for the possibility of a candidate winning with less than 50% of the vote or creating a costly future runoff election. Our platform reads, all elections should be held using either a ranked choice system or approval voting. In light of this, we pose the following question provided by our friend Vinay Orikonde at Rank the Vote USA. How could alternative voting methods like ranked choice voting create space for minor parties and more diversity of opinion in the American political discussion? How would your administration work to support these kinds of electoral reform? And we begin with Peter Sonsky.
Thank you, Brian. You mentioned at the top of your introduction ballot access, and I want to touch on that first because ballot access, in my view, is our most important objective as a party. The ASP has only ever enjoyed state ballot access in the single digits, and you know this keenly. I think In 2020, UNMR were on, was it 8 states?
8 states.
And then write-in access has been limited too. We haven't even gotten across the board in the remaining states for write-in access. Ballot access is costly. You mentioned that. It's costly both in time and it's costly in money. And so it makes it prohibitive, but it serves well the duopoly. I agree that there needs to be some legitimate requirements for achieving ballot access. States have to recognize the grassroots efforts of people and not impose these onerous requirements that are just going to frustrate legitimate efforts to contribute to the common good. Excessive signature counts and excessive filing fees, these are so common. So getting the best or the broadest possible ballot access is the best potential for the party to increase both in size and in favorable recognition. I would say ranked choice voting has traction in many states and many local levels. It's efficient. It serves to allow many parties, candidates to vie for the elected office without, as you said, ensuring voters are their interests are respected. Ranked choice, it defeats that notion that you mentioned, voting for the lesser evil or not having their vote count. I endorse ranked choice voting. I think that it's valuable. I will say that we've also in the past sought for proportional representation, but to me, ballot access number 1, ranked choice voting number 2.
That's good.
All right, and Mike Vick.
So on the question of alternative voting methods, I will say that based on my research on this, and you all can check out pages like rangevoting.org and look at starvoting.us. Ranked choice voting is actually not a fix for our problem, and it doesn't actually afford third parties the kind of leg up that things like approval voting and star voting would give us. So, I've done a lot of organizing work in my time. I can tell you that any kind of reform like this will require an enormous amount of organizing effort. So if you're going to take that time and make that effort, you want to shoot your shot with the best bullet you got. And the best bullet we've got is star voting, with a secondary one being approval voting. But I pointed this out in several other forums that we've had already. The notion of wasted vote for a third party, people that say this either don't understand how a presidential election works, or they want to guarantee that you don't understand how it works. And that is that we don't have a national popular vote in this country. We have 50 plus national or state level popular votes. The person that votes for the candidate that loses, and that's millions of people who vote for the Republican candidate in blue states and millions of people who vote for the Democratic candidate in red states, have wasted their vote because they could have voted for Mickey Mouse and it would have had the exact same effect on the Electoral College. Millions of people who vote for the winning candidate who vote for that candidate, and that candidate has gotten more than 50% plus one vote, they've also wasted their vote. So a vote for a third party is actually much more efficacious. In this case, it can help that third party. And so we need to learn how elections actually work in this country and not be bamboozled.
Okay, and Dr. Abernathy.
Yes, sir. So I of course, I believe ranked choice voting is absolutely superior to the current system. But it's really important that here comes out my inner political science professor, that we remember what is held at the state level and what is held at the federal level. And what Mike just said about the Electoral College means that precisely that we don't have a popular vote there. In other states, I wrote an article and published an article on the assisted suicide vote in Vermont. And instead of having Republicans and Democrats, they had multi-member districts. That might be a good place to start for us. Focus on multi-member districts where it's not just two candidates of two different parties that have a shot, right? There's different opportunities for different people who are ranked in different ways in order to get elected. So, I mean, that's one way to go. But I would like to completely reaffirm what Peter Sotsky has said. And that is when we talk about voter reform, like ranked choice voting and how important that is, I kind of feel like it's the equivalent of talking about home improvement to someone that's homeless. I had voters that could not vote for me, that told me they could not vote for me. And actually had one that immediately go out who was so mad and he joined the party when he was turned away, even though I was on the ballot. We've done everything for ballot access. There's a Supreme Court case that we're working on. I'm working on with the other third-party candidate here in Texas to try to deal with that problem. But ballot access really seems to be something that we need to be focused on more about getting our vote counted than finding ways to improve the process of voting in general.
All right, Dr. Johnson.
I just do, of course, agree with the concept of ranked choice voting. I want to focus, however, on the House of Representatives. I think that would solve many, many problems in terms of the size of our population. The House of Representatives has not been expanded in size since 1911. In 1911, we were 93 million as a population. We are now at 333 million souls in this country. And having a representative representing 600,000 per just unreasonable. So I think we could solve a lot of these kinds of problem access by being for the size of the House of Representatives. Right now it's 435 members. That should be expanded to like over 800 members to represent a country of our size. So I think that's, along with ranked choice voting, I would be focused on in the general election is trying to convince the American people, and I think it would be an easy convince, that we need to expand the size of the House of Representatives. That would make it easy for many third parties to be competitive because you'll have a lot more seats. It would also do gerrymandering, which is a very important aspect, and it will lessen the temptation to engage in voter suppression and to stop ballot at us. So I think the biggest thing we could do as a party would be to nominate someone who's going to support expansion of the House of Representatives.
Okay, Erskine Levy.
Yes, first off the bat, I want to say I support ranked choice voting. I do support getting more ballot access and to make it easy for actual third parties to be able to do that without so much red tape that you have to go through. Now, mind you, on the other end, I don't want just willy-nilly anybody to say, I'm a third party, give me ballot access, and they got it. They got to be some sort of requirements to go through it, some sort of checks and balances to get there. Along with what I'm saying, I do want to say, or I do want to point out, since this is my U.S. government teacher in me saying this, the difference between electoral college and the popular vote. First off, and I have adults that don't understand this. I even have teachers that don't understand this. To get the electoral vote of any given state, you have to get the popular vote of that state. I think the problem that we have is after all is said and done and the electoral votes are counted, then it's sometimes, and in some elections, I'm not going to name them all, where someone else got the popular vote, but yet the other person got the electoral vote. And you say, well, how can that happen? That's because of the big populated states that give them 2 or 3 million extra votes. They didn't need all those votes, but that's just how populated those states are. And that's where the extra votes come in. So you still have to get the popular vote of each state to get the electoral vote. Again, though, I am for ranked choice voting. It won't work until we get better ballot access to bona fide political parties. Thank you.
Okay, and Joe Schreiner.
Yeah, you know, to about 93% of the American populace, the terminology ranked choice voting is like subsidiarity, distributism, etc., etc. I mean, that's just the reality. The only place they're really doing that with any regularity is up in Alaska. And right now, Sarah Palin is not really happy with that system. As you probably know, she lost her bid at the congressional seat because in part of the ranked choice voting. But here's the deal, and Peter brought up, and a couple other people have too, that ballot access is something we need to look at closely, but we have to realize, and here's the catch-22, what party are the secretaries of state? They're either Republican or Democrat. And if they're setting the rules for the voting, it's going to be prohibitive against third parties. That's just reality. And so, and just to give you one example, because people sometimes they'll ask me, you've been campaigning for a while, you've done all this media and that kind of thing, and you haven't gotten very many votes. Little vignette. During campaign 2000, my wife and I, after the kids had gone to bed in the motorhome, we were sitting up. We had printed off all of the criteria to get on the ballots in each one of the states. In Texas alone, my wife looked up and she goes, well, this is good. We only need 59,000 signatures in Texas. You're an independent candidate. How's that happening? And also with a very thin third party, it's going to be pretty difficult to do that too. And so again, I think where the energy needs to go in the context of this, and it needs to be a huge amount of energy, is not focused so much on changing the system as into breaking into the mainstream American system, which means that we need to put our energy into becoming mainstream in the party.
All right, thank you, candidates. Now to the next question, Dr. Hanning.
Yes, thank you, Brian. A presidential campaign is a long and often grueling affair. Long days, short nights, lots of travel. Even with the ability of social media and the internet to bring you to someone's attention in the blink of an eye, there's really no substitute for face-to-face interactions. If elected as our nominee, how do you plan to overcome this hurdle? And let's begin with Dr. Larry Johnson.
So my campaign strategy will be focused on all of our other candidates throughout the United States who are running at the federal level, which means making a very targeted general election campaign. Combining all of these together with the presidential vision will, first of all, empower and make it easier for the general population to understand what our message is. If the presidential candidate is appearing with other ASP candidates in congressional districts, for example, or in Senate races, that makes for a very targeted and very less expensive campaign program for the candidate. So that's one way that I would focus on, basically expanding the size of the party, making it easier to get the message out, and as well as making it possible to get to everybody. So if I'm going to a candidate who's running, let's say in Wisconsin, knowing that the presidential candidate from ASP is coming into Wisconsin to campaign with the Senate candidate will expand the newsworthiness of that event. And so what I would focus on is doing that, making sure that I'm going to where the other candidates agree with our vision and promoting their success in that state. So I wouldn't be going to every state. I would be looking at the states in terms of where do we have competitive, that I may able maybe to get on the ballot as an independent candidate or able to basically get news reports or whatever. Where do we have those candidates? And that is where the presidential candidate should focus his or her attention, going there and campaigning with those people. And I think that would make it a much easier slog for the presidential candidate. And anyway, that would be my way of expanding the size of the party.
Thanks for that. Peter Sonsky.
Thank you. First of all, I want to indicate that I feel my campaign has been very robust and sustained from its very beginning. You mentioned that presidential campaigning is long and grueling. I think really so many different forms of political campaigning can be described that way. But the experience I have, the skills that I have in organizing and recruiting, I think are evident in the way I've begun my campaign, the way I'm sustaining my campaign. And I invite members to evaluate my efforts and the consistency I've had at my messaging and my outreach. Meeting people face to face is truly important. And I've done that already as a candidate, and I still have more opportunities that I've already planned. Where and when I can meet face to face, I desire to meet face to face. Those relationships are most important. But where I can't, I'll connect in other ways. We need to do what is available to us so that we can be as effective as possible. And to be sure, we've all become very familiar with this method of communication, especially since the pandemic. I've traveled extensively throughout the continental United States. I've traveled by air, I've traveled by rail, I've traveled by highway, and it's a common practice. I'll continue to do it. I'm comfortable with it. And when I travel, I will look to find ASP members to introduce myself to them and to hear from them. It's not all about giving a message, it's also about listening and hearing from them.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Jacqueline Abernathy.
Well, I would absolutely love the chance to travel. Any state chapters that would be willing to host me, I would love to meet you. Fortunately, long days and short nights just kind of come with the territory of activism, of everything I've done. Hey, I think it's pretty much the definition of parenthood, right? And one of the good things is that even though I'm relatively younger than most of like Joe Biden and some of my competition, I'm not a retiree, but I am self-employed. So my work goes with me where my laptop can go and where my brain can go. And so I have a completely flexible and open schedule to travel as much as I'm needed. And I have always just been able to take my teeny tiny entourage with me. I've always had my kids in tow. It's not presented any issues. My son has recently started kindergarten, so I've discussed this with my husband to see if, hey, would it be a problem if I need to travel, a bit more, because you would be picking him up, taking him to school, and so I've already cleared my schedule. I know what this will involve, and I'm looking forward to being able to do it, and I feel privileged that I'm in a position where I can do it.
Very good. Mike Vick?
So, I certainly have a desire and an ability to travel to as many states as possible, and would want to make sure to do that. I also have a background in fundraising, which would be a necessary prerequisite to make that happen. I will say that one additional thing that I have a background in is organizing, and through that work, I've have experience with distributed relational organizing. Something that we can do to multiply our efforts is to use this organizing tool. It's a way of making sure that we're getting our message into the hands of people that actually believe in it and are the most likely people to be able to convert people to that message, which are people that they actually know. They may not know me, but they know their family member, they know their friend who's a member of ASP or someone that we have found on the campaign trail. And when you're able to do that and utilize that distributed organizing model, you're able to multiply your efforts and really do it in a way that is very effective, because a person is much more likely to take the word of somebody that they know, that they trust, that they love, than someone who's a stranger knocking on their door. Certainly I would make every effort to get to as many states as possible myself. But there are many ways that we can multiply our efforts in a very effective way with relational organizing.
Thank you, Mike. Erskine Levy, next.
Yes, just want to let you know that I am not a retiree and I don't own my own business. I actually have a job and I work every day. I am a teacher Monday through Friday, and of course, I'm doing lesson planning and all that kind of stuff. But I used to be a field rep for a state senator. The state senator himself couldn't go everywhere, and even in his own state assembly district area. And he had several of these reps, me one of them, that would go in there in his steed, and they're being requested a lot. So I got a little badge, and I represented Bob Huff. I went to different functions. I gave speeches, I gave talks, I gave out awards. So the way I look at it is, if I can't travel, I hope no one holds that against me, because I have a job and I need to pay for things. But if I do get the nomination, and then I do it like Senator Bob Huff did, and get representatives in other states. I have family across the states. I have family in Florida, family in North Carolina, I think family in New York, and possibly family in Texas, that might be able to go in my steed with a little badge and say, hey, I'm here for Erskine Levi, and give a talk about them and about me and what I belong to. But I will tell you this: if I somehow win the presidency of the United States, all bets are off. I'm retiring. I'm traveling to Washington, D.C., and I can go anywhere in the world after that. But that's all I got to say about that. Thank you very much.
All right. Joe Schreiner.
James, I want another 2 minutes. I think you get 2 of these, right, for this, because I've traveled a whole lot.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So my take on this one is, between the extensive cross-country research for our position papers and the campaigning over multiple election cycles, we have traveled so far 250,000 miles. 250,000 miles and counting. And this is what the mainstream candidates do. They travel about, they stump in diners, they give talks, they generate media from place to place. Like, a lot of times in here, I've heard, like, well, we had to get together and do another meetup and another. If you do a meetup without parlaying that into press and a bunch of other stuff, it's just the insular kind of thing. It's like talking on the streams, And so what we've done is we went out stumping in diners and on street corners and given a good number of talks, and we generated media in the form of 1,000 newspaper articles, some 250 regional network TV news shows, a whole lot of radio shows. And I'm sure for those of you that have run, Jacqueline and James, you know how difficult it is to get mainstream press. I mean, that's just the reality. A lot of people in here don't understand it because they haven't been on the road trying to do that. Now, we have done this on a tremendously creative shoestring budget, putting it mildly. And Tai Chi just posted in here that the party needs to pony up and put their money where their mouth is. I'm paraphrasing that, Tai Chi, but if they want candidates to travel, they need to subsidize some of that. Well, let me give an example of how much you'd have to subsidize us. Okay. During one of the campaign tours, we broke down in a desert road traveling to Las Cruces, New Mexico. A good Samaritan stock car driver, who we think God sent, stopped. He helped us fix the engine and invited us to his place in Carlsbad for the night. We hadn't planned a Carlsbad stop. The next day, a third order Franciscan group asked me to give a talk to their group, which then led to some border research. It turns out the group had adopted a church south of the border in order to help. And part of our Hispanic immigration issue is trying to mobilize more of that kind of thing. So after taking notes with these people, they in turn donated enough money to us after we had fixed the motorhome with parts and that kind of thing to to Las Cruces. When we were in Las Cruces, I joined an abortion protest, but I contacted the media, and the media showed up to do a 6 o'clock news piece. I mean, I didn't just go there, so to speak. And then after that, the next day I went to the campus for the University of New Mexico, walked in the doors of the newspaper there, it's a big campus, and talked the editor into doing a story. He did this really great story. And then as an addendum, the Las Cruces Diocesan newspaper, I found out they were in the area. And so I wrote a press release to them about our time in southern New Mexico doing a border tour, and a big article ran in the diocesan paper. We reached, AAA and God, we reached a couple 100,000 people in the context of all that over that time, spending maybe $50. And that included the chicken McNuggets for the kids. And so my point being is that we need people, whoever the candidate is, who's not only savvy about media. Brian was saying the primary thing we should be doing right now is trying to get media to raise the profile of the campaign, not just kind of talking to each other still. We need somebody who's strong enough to go out there and do that. So with that, I'll pass.
All right. Now with what I think will be our last question, Brian Carroll.
Yes, it is said that no man or woman is an island. All of you have your strengths and weaknesses. Tickets often try to balance out those weaknesses. What do you see as your strengths and weaknesses, and what will you be looking for in a vice president to balance out your weaknesses? And we'll start with Dr. Abernathy.
Yes, I love this question because I actually thought that until I looked into it, I believed that we would be able to choose our running mate. And so I'd already considered who I would want for a running mate. And back a long time ago, just kind of as a joke, my ex-boyfriend is a CUA professor, and we were going to run for the presidency together. And our slogan was going to be 2 doctors are better than none, because there were no other doctors running for the presidency at that time. And I sought out Mary Kelleher Fitz. She is also a professor here in Texas, very active in the party, someone of great character, very competent, very trustworthy. And the reason why I sought her out is piggybacks directly on what I think my strengths are, because we struggle so much to be taken seriously. Having the credibility of having a PhD, of being an expert, that sort of expertise is really critical in order to get us the due attention, the gravitas that we need. One of the reasons why I'm running is because I feel like I could lend that credibility to the party, but I also have an ability to get more press attention, more marketing attention for campaign finance reasons than I feel like other candidates could, just because I would be a successful female pro-life presidential candidate. And I thought, what better ticket would there be than the first 2-woman presidential ticket? It would be the first in American history to have 2 women running for the presidency and the vice presidency. And they would also be pro-life women. I mean, I feel like that would just be fodder for media attention right there. That would do us a lot of good. So I was trying to cultivate and capitalize on what my strengths are in who I would like to see as my running mate, more than trying to find a running mate that I felt like made up for areas of weakness. That's pretty much where I'm thinking of going if I were able to choose a running mate, and I believe that the national committee makes that decision. Can someone inform me on that?
I will stick in an informational thing here. After we have nominated our president through an online voting, we will have a convention shortly thereafter, and the convention will approve the candidate for vice president, but I think the nominee will certainly have considerable influence. All right, Dr. Johnson.
You're muted, Dr. Johnson.
Yes. My strengths are twofold. First off, I have a very clear platform. In my book, The New America, my proposal for the Gateway Act, and my proposal for the War Powers Amendment, very clear platform. So I will be able to present that in a very strong way. My second strength is I have run for election before, and I know how to run a campaign. I was a Republican before I became independent, and then made my way to being a member of the American Solidarity Party. I tried twice to win the congressional seat. The first time I got in the caucus process here in Colorado, over 50% of the vote, I was the top line winner. The second time, I was also the top line winner, getting over 50% of the vote. I didn't win the primary, but I got 47% of the vote. And the only reason why I lost that election is that on the day before the vote, my opponent flashed all over the network television a false statement about me and Social Security, which, you know, when you play with Social Security, it's like the third rail of politics. So she hammered me on the last day of the campaign. I was unable to respond, and my polling numbers dropped to 47% at the end of the election. So I know how to run a campaign. I've done very well in that, and I have a strong platform. So what would I be looking for? Where's my weakness? My weakness is the ASP party. They don't know me. They don't know me very well. And so I would be looking for a candidate that would strengthen my connection with ASP around the country. So that would be my primary goal. Someone who agrees with my vision to an extent and to the ASP platform, but someone who has a long history, significant history with ASP.
All right, and Erskine Levy.
Yes, strengths. I have been in an elected office before, low level, but I've been in elected, although that is not a requirement to be president. There's only three. You have to be at least 35 years of age, you have to be born, natural born in the country, and you have to have lived in the country for the past 14 years before you try to run for president. I think, without asking, I think we all match that, especially the age category. How can I ask? Um, but strengths, I've also, which is not required, former military. I know how the military works, and as someone pointed out in the chats over here, I am, even though I'm military, I'm totally against war. I don't want war because I've been in the military and I've seen what it can do to people. It kills people. It's not good. It kills civilians. It's not good. So I'm totally against it. But I think with my background of military, I'll not have the wool pull over my eyes. Uh, and background with law enforcement being local level police, but as the executive leader of the executive branch, then I'm obviously enforcing the laws at the federal level. Uh, So I think to balance that, I think I need someone that may, even though I teach economics, I told you I wasn't an expert. I would like to have somebody that can balance that as better at economics, maybe better at world affairs, and things that would help balance what I'm doing. I'm not going to be stupid. I'll know what to ask, but I expect someone to be a tag team, both my vice presidential candidate and myself, to tag team on each other and be able to help out each as a team. And I would carry the title president, and that other person would carry the title vice president. That's the way I see it. Thank you.
All right, Joe Schreiner.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to start with something a little unusual here, but whatever you guys think of Donald Trump, and I'm pretty sure most ASP members aren't big fans. He was elected president of the United States for 4 years, majorly impacting policies in this country. I don't know if any of you guys saw that, but it happened. In our rather shallow pop culture 24-hour news cycles, Trump won by being combative towards his competitors and the press. He did it by being continually theatrical, drawing major media coverage, positive and negative, but day in and day out. And he did it by coming across as an outsider from the Beltway. Now, as you probably have picked up tonight, to a degree, that's kind of me. And the part of the reason that Trump won was he picked a balanced ticket. Who did he pick as his vice president? Pence. And so what happened was Pence came across as a rock-ribbed Republican, very studied on Republican platform points and studied on contemporary issues. And so it was the combination of those two in concert with everything else that he did that got him there. And again, to go back to with my extroverted personality and all those years of dealing with the press and knowing how to not only generate it, but how to be pretty entertaining within the context of it, that average Joe thing, that's partially a shtick, you know, and it works really well. It's amazing what happens with that thing. And it bills me as the ultimate outsider. So having said all that, I would need to come up with a ticket, and I have somebody in mind right now that would be the Mike Pence of the ASP within the context of these candidates.
Okay, and Peter Sonsky.
Thank you, Brian. I think experience is probably my key strength. I've served in elected office. I'm serving now. I'm in my second term as an education board member, and I've also held other local elected office twice before. So I've been sworn in 4 times. I have more than a decade of government service on my resume. What I'm thinking about is, as I'm listening to my fellow candidates, you know, today we are in the primary phase. We're campaigning more or less internally to party members within the ASP. And that's something that's unique because that's something I really haven't done before. Once we earn the nomination, one of us earns the nomination, that candidate now has a distinctly outward focus. Joe had mentioned even an outward focus now, and I think there's merit in that, but I think we're all focused on prevailing on the voters. If I'm the nominee, I'm going to take all of this listening I've been doing about what our needs are and where our opportunities are, and that includes geography and what constituencies we need to reach, what gives us the most potential to accomplish the goals I mentioned earlier of growing the ASP, growing it in size, growing it in influence. It's those factors that are going to guide me in offering to the delegates a recommendation for vice president. I want somebody who's going to compliment me, but at the same time, that person can't have any reservations about the ASP principles or its platform, and that he or she is really capable of improving our outreach to those key audiences. It's got to be somebody that has an affinity for campaigning, meeting people, and doing it alone because it's a lonely job, as we talked about, and understanding ways to advance policy initiatives in our party's ticket.
Okay, and Mike Vick.
So as far as strengths, I have a great deal of electoral experience, both as a candidate as well as a political operative within a campaign. I have fundraising experience. I have organizing experience. I have media experience. I spent 10 years right out of college as a journalist. So, I bring those strengths to the table. I enjoy campaigning, and it's something that I've done, been involved in politics since well before I could vote, having grown up in a very political household. In terms of, balancing the ticket with my strengths and the strengths of that would complement, what I bring to the table. I think I'm, fairly unique among the candidates in terms of having come into the party decidedly from the left of American politics. And I think that we as a party have the ability to draw fairly evenly from both sides of American politics. We're more progressive in our economic message, more progressive in our healthcare message, more progressive in our immigration message, and we are more conservative in our social message, whether that's abortion or family issues, what have you. So I think that the strength that I bring that's unique in this field is that I certainly am able to draw on folks that are coming in from the left of American politics. And I'll go ahead and use one of my two, since this is the last question. But we are, we have a great deal of appeal, both on the left but also on the right, and so I would want to balance out my strengths with the strengths of a conservative vice presidential candidate who could bring that message. And certainly, I am personally conservative on social issues, but no one would confuse me for having come into this party from the Republican side of American politics. So, certainly that would be a goal of mine in recommending to the delegate convention that we nominate someone from a more conservative background.
Okay. Now Dr. Hannock will guide us through the closing statements.
Yes, thank you to all the candidates. And as you know, you each have a final 1-minute wrap up. We wish we could have other questions, but we've hit our limit. So 1 minute for each candidate, a final statement. And let's begin with Dr. Jacqueline Abernathy.
Well, I would like to conclude by saying thank you so much, everyone, for spending your time here tonight learning about all the options. And it wasn't necessarily anything that I felt like was wrong or lacking about the crop of candidates that we have here that inspired me to run. The reason why I felt so compelled to run was because we only have a choice, this chance once every 4 years to grow and to take advantage of media attention and being relevant to politically homeless voters across the United States. And I happen to be very adept when it comes to financing things, raising money, campaign financing. And also, I happen to be a lightning rod for media attention in my activism. And so when I saw the benefits that would offer the party, that was why I could not run. That's what compelled me to run. And so this is why I'm asking also for your support.
All right. Dr. Larry Johnson.
The New America Agenda for a New Century, a new true America, focused on peace, technological progress at home, and prosperity for all of our communities. A whole-of-life vision from conception to natural death. Not stuck in the bygone era, but boldly going forward into the horizons of human progress. We can do this. We can gather together Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, and very visionary boomers to unleash the new world spirit. We can dust off the 18th century Constitution, now 18 times amended since then, with our own 21st century War Powers Amendment to the Constitution. We can secure privacy rights, and we can expand the House of Representatives to bring it closer to the people. If this vision inspires you, I ask for your support and your vote to be the presidential nominee of the American Solidarity Party. God bless you, and God bless America.
Erskine Levy Jr.
Yes, my name is Erskine Levi. I'm running for the President of the United States for the American Solidarity Party. And I just want to kind of point out something for you to think about, that if I get the nomination from the ASP to run as your president, that would be great if I got every vote from every ASP member at that point in the general election, well, that wouldn't be enough. And well, we all know that. But if I can appeal to the two major parties, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, I might get more votes from some of those that are looking elsewhere than what their original party is. For instance, for the Democrat Party, I would get votes for being pro-environment, pro-euthanasia, anti-death penalty, and pro-social justice. On the Republican side, the fact that I'm a former military, former law enforcement officer, pro-life, and pro-traditional family, I would get votes from that side. And that's what I hope to do, so I can get all the American Solidarity Party votes and then votes from the Republican Party and votes from the Democrat Party. And I want to thank you for considering me as your nominee. And I hope to get your vote for the next President of the United States. Thank you very much. Have a good night. God bless.
All right. Joe Schreiner.
Hello, fellow Pelicans. I just realized when I gave my last 1-minute talk that I misspoke. I messed up. I'm in my car, it's a little dark. So I said the words pro-euthanasia. That is definitely wrong. I am not for euthanasia at all. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of medications out there that can take the pain away. I would not ever want anybody to end their life on purpose. So I hope that clears it up. And thank you very much for letting me make that statement. Have a good night. God bless.
Okay, you know what? Mike brought that up, and I just want to mention this quickly as a preface. I'm also a journalist. I have a degree in journalism, worked on some newspapers. I know how to navigate newsrooms. That's why I've been able to do what I've done, also with God's grace. But I'm not going to talk about journalism at the end here. I am going to talk about baseball again. I talked about it at the outset, and I'm going to talk about it now. It's the bottom of the ninth for the country, and it's not looking good. 4,000 babies continue to be killed every day. And if they make it out of the womb, they might find themselves in a pool of blood on a classroom floor. But luckily for them, the bases are loaded. A core ASP party structure is intact on first, growing ASP ballot access is on second, and the ASP platform to reverse all the societal dysfunction stands poised at third to come home. At the plate, if it was me, would be a veteran player with a massive amount of campaigning experience and a lot of research data and a captivating, unique narrative. Think the ultimate underdog. That will knock the ball far out of the park. Think the movie The Natural, the last scene.
And Peter Sonsky.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to all who've tuned in tonight. Thank you to my fellow candidates. You know, there is a palpable sense of awe to be vying for the position of President of the United States of America. You know, even to be a candidate among many for a third-party nomination, and with admittedly a real long shot, it still causes a great deal of introspection. The President of the United States has as much responsibility, as much influence as any other world leader that I can ever recall, and I don't take that lightly. I believe in my views. I believe in the American Solidarity Party's views. And I believe that there is an audience in the electorate that will embrace those views. I believe in the values of the ASP, and they are best for America. I believe we can achieve them, though it's not going to be simple and it's not going to be quick. But I believe they're worth upholding and promoting. And I believe that the members of this party can put me on a path to do that. And I respectfully ask them to do so. Thank you.
And now comes Mike Vick.
So thank you to our gracious moderators and to all of my fellow candidates. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here tonight, and I look forward to the future debates. I've been blessed to be able to be involved in something that I love, which is political activism, political organizing, and I've been overjoyed to bring that experience and drive to the work that I've done at ASP, whether that was on leadership, in the 2 states that I've lived in since I've been a member of ASP, or working as the party's national development director, doing fundraising for the party. So I have loved that experience, and I would appreciate your vote to take that experience to the next level as your nominee for president.
Thank you very much. And now we turn it over to our technical master.
All right. I'd like to thank all of our candidates and our moderators for all their work tonight. And I would like to let everyone know that this debate will be available via the podcast very soon, podcast.solidarity-party.org. And the next debate will be in 2 weeks. It will be moderated by members of the Young Americans for Solidarity and will pose questions from the perspective of younger generations. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us a line, shane.hoffman@solidarity-party.org. And we will see you again in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Godspeed.
Good night.